Hello everyone! Today I'm going to do a slightly different video than usual. I've been talking to a couple of friends and they're not wet shaving, and they also got curious about bowl lathering, so I'm gonna record a small tutorial, or not really a tutorial because there are many ways to approach bowl lathering, but I'm gonna share how I'm doing my bowl lathering. And if you're new to the hobby, or if you usually don't bowl lather but you want to try, hopefully this will be useful for you. I'm sure that most of you that are not new to my channel, you're probably way better bowl latherers than me, so you can use this video and give me some tips in the comments. Okay, so let's say that you're new and you want to do bowl lathering for a very first time. The two things that you need on the hardware side is a brush and a bowl. So for the brush today I'm going to use a synthetic brush. There are options to use natural hair brush, either boar or badger, the more popular one. If you use one of the natural brushes, I advise you to just make sure soaking the brush in advance for at least 5 to 10 minutes. That way the knot will not kind of like eat up your lather and you're gonna have way easier time bowl lathering. But with synthetic knots, the bowl lathering is quite consistent. No matter if you use more expensive one or a cheaper one, it's fairly easier to manage. So for that purpose I'm gonna use synthetic. Also there are some of my favorite knots as well. Aside from that, we're gonna use soap today, but if you have a cream, the process is absolutely the same. It's just about approaching it one step at a time and don't rush. So I'm gonna switch the camera so you're gonna have a good view of what I'm going to do next, and I'll get back to you. Okay, hopefully this view is better for you to track the progress of the lathering. In my other videos I usually share my lathering, but it's not with this view. So this will be really helpful for you to keep an eye on what's going on. We're gonna use a soap today, and I'm just gonna open it over here. This is a soft soap that you can scoop. Now use this scoop over here. And when it comes to the amount of soap, a really good guide you'll see in either discussions online or some other videos, no more than almond seed. Sometimes half an almond seed or a little bit more is enough, but maximum of almond seed size is more than enough. You'll see that we're gonna whip a lot of lather from this one. Now make sure that I spread it on the bottom of the bowl, and as you can see, the consistency of this specific soap resembles a cream in terms of softness. So either if you use harder soap or soft soap or a cream from a tube, everything is pretty much the same. Cream from the tube, you don't need to worry about scooping, because you can just squeeze a little bit at the bottom, and that's what you're gonna see here. So the soap is here. On the side you can see my brush. I left it soaking. As I mentioned, if you use a natural brush, boar or badger, make sure to leave it soaking for at least 5 to 10 minutes minimum. The more the better. That way the bristles will be saturated with water and they're not going to absorb your soap, and the lathering will be easier. So I'm just going to squeeze the excess water over here. We're going to take longer than usual. I'm not going to rush with the lathering, so you can see all the steps as I'm going over. For the water that I'm going to add, just for convenience, I'm going to use this sprayer. It doesn't really matter. You can either water the tips of your brush a little bit from the faucet, or you can just get some water on your fingers and allow it to drip in the bowl. But make sure that you add the water at small steps, just a little bit. So I'm just gonna start with 4 or 5 sprays. That's quite little for the amount of soap that I have here at the bowl, or at the bottom of the bowl. And I'll just allow it to kind of like cover all the soap. And I can start gently rub the top of the whiskers from the knot. And you can see how quickly, especially if your soap is soft like this one, the lather will start spreading. And as we work, you will see that it's getting kind of like more on the creamy side. There's still some water, and most of it will be on the brush at this point, and that's perfectly normal. You can continue to work it out a little bit more, and you can start whipping it faster. But you see that the consistency gets quite creamy right now, right? And it's dense and creamy. You also see that the more that you work on the lather, those bubbles that you can identify over here, they'll pretty much disappear. They'll just become smaller and smaller, and as you whip them, they will just become a really nice and smooth consistency. So at this point, you may feel that this is at a good state, but the reality is, because I was generous with my scoop, that there is still plenty of soap in my brush, and I can feel it, especially if I start to agitate it a little bit towards the bowl, that there is quite a bit of soap, and the more I work it, the denser that consistency in the bowl gets. So that means that we can add a little bit more water. I was probably supposed to choose a different base. This one, by base I refer to the base of the soap. This one lathers really easily. I haven't used it for a week and forgot how easy it is to lather. But I added extra 5 or 6 sprays. Now you can see how the volume of the lather increases. That's because the soap that was mainly on the top of the brush, trapped between the whiskers of the knot, now gets worked out, and you see how the volume increases more dramatically. And the bubbles that disappeared reappeared. That's because we added some water, and that's perfectly normal. The quicker you add water, or the higher amount of water you add, the more bubbles you will see. And you will find out, if you try different soaps or different creams, that they actually behave differently. Some require a little bit more water compared to this example that we have today, and some require less. Like this one today doesn't require too much water to whip a really good lather. And at this point, I personally like a consistency that resembles a thick creamy yogurt. This means that there is nice volume, but the lather is not too airy, as you can see, and there are nice and shiny peaks, as you can see over here. I'm trying to be mindful and to not knock the phone, because my hands are all around it. Yeah, you see the camera is not doing much justice in terms of how shiny the lather looks, but that creamy consistency is there and the lather looks very good. So when it comes to the consistency of the lather, this is my preference for lather that I like. You may experiment with a lather that it's a bit more creamy, dense, and kind of like people like to call it dry. Sometimes if you have thicker hair, that might be a challenge for the razor and it may not feel as smooth while you shave, but just experiment with it. There is no kind of like absolute rule what's the perfect lather for me. That lather works over here. Some people, they like more of a denser lather. Some people like very airy with a lot of kind of like volume. So it all depends, and experimenting always helps for you to see how your shave will go. So that's the one that I personally like. Some people may have stopped early on. Maybe they were not going to add more water than the initial 3-4 sprays that I did. But it's all a matter of personal preference, and as long as the lather delivers smooth and pleasant shave for you, that's the perfect lather for you. So don't forget this. So experiment with it, play around with it. That's the exciting part. And over here you can see how good this lather looks. Okay. And that's it. I have a very nice lather that I'm gonna use now. I hope that this video was useful. Let me know in the comments, do you prefer to bowl lather or face lather? Both are great options and also really good to mix up your usual routine if you're like me and you prefer bowl lathering. Occasionally I really like to face lather and just experiment with different soaps that I have, different brushes and how they feel. So you may do the reversed one and experiment every now and then and do some bowl lathering. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for joining me for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe.